Hello and welcome in, you guys. My name is Sai and today we are here to break down and talk a little bit about One Piece chapter 1120 titled Atlas. So yeah, with that being said, let's just hop into it. So the first thing we have this week is again the cover page story featuring Yamato and her journey. And what we see this week is that Denjiro has made an appearance and he has now captured the kids from last week who were throwing rocks at Yamato. What's kind of funny about this is that you can see Yamato telling him, no, it's okay. But Denjiro's like, hey, don't worry, I got him right here, Yamato. It's kind of funny, and I do wonder if we'll see them next week, maybe. Because, let's be real here, how is Denjiro realistically going to punish these kids? I feel like he's not going to execute them. You know, he's not going to throw them in a river with a bag of rocks. I feel like Yamato might get them out of this punishment, and then maybe because of that they'll start to like Yamato a little bit more, but I'm not too sure, you know? Like, does this plot point actually matter? I don't think so, but I do like that it's here because it shows that the newer generation of kids don't like Yamato simply because she's a part of Kaido's bloodline. You know, it's kind of like the same thing what they did with the Kurozumi clan. So it's nice to see that that is being brought up again, and hopefully Yamato can break that cycle of hatred while they're still young. And now, moving on to the first page of the chapter, we have a flashback that takes place 26 years in the past at Punk Hazard. Turns out that Professor Clover, while he was still a pirate, decided to travel over here and request Vegapunk's assistance when it comes to uncovering the secrets of the Void Century. Vegapunk quickly turns him down, saying, hey, you're a wanted man, what you're doing is illegal, and the government has tabs on you, brother. The reason why you're still around today is because they want to follow you back home and snatch up the rest of your co-conspirators. And that makes a lot of sense. You know, we didn't really have that context before this, that the government was that competent. So it is a nice change of pace to see them actually thinking things through. But yes, Vegapunk, just like how he turned down Dragon's offer, also turns down Clover's offer, saying that he doesn't really want to get involved with them. And not to mention, you know, he doesn't say it, but I doubt that Clover could actually fund all of Vegapunk's experiments. So Clover then goes on and explains why he's looking into history, saying, hey, people should not be persecuted for their name or their birth. And funny enough, you know, this kind of ties back in with the cover page story where the kids are attacking Yamato because of what Kaido did, right? So Clover's saying the same thing here, like, hey, my brother got killed simply because he was a member of the D clan. And yes, you heard that right, Clover's brother, and Clover by extension is a part of the D family, and that just makes so much sense. I mean, to be fair, you know, we have a lot of D clan members out there in the world, and they all are prominent characters in the story, so it just makes sense that he is one as well. But this explains perfectly why he's interested in the Void Century in the first place. So yes, it turns out that his brother's name, I'm gonna butcher it, I am so sorry. I think it's Cleome, but yes, his name is Cleome D. Clover, and according to old Irish mythology, that translates to the Sword of Light. Actually, I have the Wikipedia article here in front of me, so I'm just going to read it through because I think it is very fascinating. So it says that the sword appears commonly as a quest object in the Irish folklore of a hero seeking the one story, which culminates in the discovery of a tale of the werewolf, where a man is magically turned into a wolf by an unfaithful wife. I don't think that has a part to play in One Piece, but we'll come back to that. The Sword of Light, according to a different commentator, is a fixture of an old Irish tale group describable as a quasi-bridal quest. The characterization is inspired by the formula where the hero gains a beautiful wife and riches by gambling against a grouch, aka a wizard champion, but suffers losses which makes him beholden to mount on a hopeless-seeming quest. Like the actual Giant's Daughter bridal quest tales, the Sword of Light hero often gains assistance of helpful animals in completing his task. The sword has been regarded as a legacy to the god-slaying weapons of Irish mythology by certain scholars. And then we'll kind of stop it right there. And let me just get to it. There are a couple of key things that I think could relate to aspects in One Piece. The first thing that sticks out to me is the fact that this sword is wielded by a hero, and that hero has the assistance of animals, right? Well, that could be Joyboy. I mean, that could be even Sun God Nika. Because, you know, going back to when we got Who's Who silhouette of Joyboy or Sun God Nika, we saw that they had a spear and they also had a sword. that could be in reference to the Sword of Light. You know, maybe there was a Sword of Light 900 years ago who had the D initial, and then they got passed down over the generations, and then boom, we have Clover's brother. You know, could be as simple as that. And as far as relating this Sword of Light to Joyboy, this could tie back into how Joyboy has a really weird crew thus far, right? Zunisha, the giant elephant, and then we have this giant robot Emeth. Joyboy's crew isn't exactly human, just like the hero in the Sword of Light's tale. The next thing that sticks out to me is the fact that this sword is a god-slaying weapon. Well, we do know that gods exist in the world of One Piece. I mean, Luffy is the sun god, or he has the sun god devil fruit. There's also a forest god, a rain god, and even an earth god. And personally, I even want to take it a step further and say that there might even be a moon god. So who knows? Maybe, you know, eventually we'll meet these other gods, and the Sword of Light's truth will be pretty important. Another thing that sticks out to me is the fact that this revolves around two tales. The one story, which could be tied in with the One Piece, and then we also have the tale of the werewolf, which I know sounds out of left field right now, but in this chapter, we do get a glimpse of Tequila Wolf. And the inclusion of Tequila Wolf in this chapter felt a little bit odd, right? Oda could have taken us anywhere, but he roped in Tequila Wolf. And one thing to keep in mind about Tequila Wolf is that that is a world government project. Why'd they name it Tequila Wolf, right? Like, there must be some wolf-related figure in the Holy Land, or maybe they just picked that name out of nowhere. We don't really know yet what Tequila Wolf is all about. You know, we don't even know where the bridge is supposed to end. But yeah, like, this could tie into Tequila Wolf. And personally, I have my own theory that just like how the Gorosei transform into demons, I'm suspecting that there might even be a werewolf transformation among the Holy Knights. There is that possibility. And now the last thing that really sticks out to me is this line right here. This characterization is inspired by the formula where the hero gains a beautiful wife by gambling against a wizard champion. Again, this sounds really odd at first, and it sounds like it might not have any correlation to One Piece, but in the very first chapter of One Piece, I'm not talking about the chapter that we have as chapter 1, but if you go back to the prototypes of One Piece, the Romance Dawn chapters, Oda actually introduced a wizard into the story. You know, the guy's name was Spiel. There was no devil fruits back then. It was actually just a weird wizard clown pirate guy. And that was Luffy's very first opponent in the series. So maybe that is a hint at something. Maybe we will meet wizards. You know, I mean, we already have weird powers with the Gorosei, right? Where they don't exactly specify a devil fruit. We never got the devil fruit descriptor box when they were introduced. And Oda has had many chances to introduce what they actually are. I mean, we know their forms, but we don't know their Zoan devil fruit. So maybe these are wizard-like powers at play. And it could tie back into Romance Dawn, the first chapter that Oda put out there. And as far as, you know, gaining a beautiful wife from this wizard, you know, if the wizard in question is Emu, for example, maybe the beautiful wife is Queen Lily. You know, I know that's a huge stretch, but there could be something here. Hey, you guys, I'm jumping in here while editing the video, and I just want to say that I have been seeing theories of people saying that Clover's brother could be Robin's dad. And I think that's a pretty good theory. You know, I feel like there's not a lot of things to disprove it. We know that Olvia's husband was an actual scholar, so this fits up with that. It also explains why Robin was at Ohara in the first place. It explains why Clover took an interest in Robin and taught her what she knows. And also, I think this also goes along with the D being passed on to the next generation, right? For that, it kind of could go either way, you know, because One Piece has shown time and time again that you don't have to be family to be family. So if Robin wasn't related to Clover and wasn't related to Clover's brother, I think that'd be fine. But if they are, I don't think that harms that narrative in any way. And yeah, I would love to see Robin be a member of the D clan. She would be Nico D Robin, which kind of sounds like Pico D Gallo. I don't know. I'm thinking about food right now, but yes, good theory overall. Let me know what you guys actually think about that. So alongside the reveal of Clover's brother, we actually learn Clover's first name as well. And his first name is Kurao. So Crow D. Clover is his full name, which I couldn't exactly find anything special about that name in particular. I feel like that might have to be something we wait for the viz to actually translate to get a better understanding of how to spell it, because I have seen some different spellings out there as well. So now, after this interaction, we have a 4-year time skip, 22 years in the past now, and we see that Ohara has officially been burnt down. Vegapunk and Caesar Clown are reading the newspaper about it, and Caesar Clown is laughing it up. You know, he's having a jolly old time. He wished he was there to see the massacre that took place. And what's interesting to me is that Caesar doesn't care about the Void Century. You know, I thought that as a scientist, he would want to know what went down in the past. But no, dude, he's pretty callous about it. You know, he's like, hey, those losers had it coming, you know. They were doing illegal activities. I would never do that. So I'm kind of interested to see what Caesar's stance on that is now that Vegapunk is dead, right? I wonder if Caesar will now pursue the Void Century. And the reason I'm posing that question is because in this chapter, you know, Vegapunk 26 years ago said, hey, that's illegal. I don't want to do that. And then we fast forward to today, and now Vegapunk is giving this giant message about the Void Century. I wonder if Caesar is going to be the exact same. You know, at first, he didn't want to learn about it. But then he comes to find out that his good friend Dr. Vegapunk died researching the Void Century, and then, just like how Clover inspired Vegapunk, I wonder if that will inspire Caesar. And before you say Caesar would never get inspired by Vegapunk, you have to remember that when the news broke that Vegapunk died, Caesar was crying. He was not happy that his adversary actually kicked the bucket. So I do think that this could actually push Neo-Mads towards the goal of uncovering the Void Century. So we go on a little bit more and we get another mini time skip in the flashback, and we cut over to when Vegapunk is now at Ohara and to when he finds out why Clover actually perished. You know, he said, hey, Clover, you had enough time to escape the Buster Call. Why did you die? And then he looks in the lake and then he sees all the books and he's like, oh, I understand now, huh? This is how important your research really was to you. And it was at that moment that, you know, Vegapunk got inspired to uncover the truth. And that is when we cut back to the present and we see that Robin is crying because of this information, which is pretty cool. I mean, Robin connected the dots pretty easily, you know. You didn't have to tell Robin that he was talking about Ohara and Clover for Robin to know that he was talking about Ohara and Clover. What's interesting here, though, is that this is when we actually get the Tequila Wolf reaction panel, and they're not really reacting, you know, they're just whipping their buddies. You know, you see Zeph and Patty as well at the Brontier, and I think this is a very odd inclusion. Of course, I think Zeph and Patty are well needed. You know, it kind of breaks up the sadness a little bit. You know, it's like, oh, you know, we're crying because of Clover, we're crying because of Ohara, but here is Zeph just standing tall. Granted, though, we do have to remember that Zeph is an old pirate as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Zeph actually knew Clover, or if Zeph knew Vegapunk even. Because, you know, back in the day, Zeph was a madman. You know, Zeph traveled to the Grand Line. Zeph was known as the Red Foot. So yeah, with that being the case, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these old head pirates actually knew each other or ran into each other a long time ago. So as far as Tequila Wolf goes, I will admit, I was honestly super shocked to see that they were still running the slave business over there. Because, you know, Dragon, I believe what it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, during the time skip, Dragon 2 years ago freed the slaves there. He liberated the main camp, or at least the camp at the end of the bridge. So seeing that the world government said, oh no, Dragon attacked, what are we gonna do? Let's just bring more slaves over there. You know, that's kind of silly. And a comment in my last video actually put it pretty well. And they said, hey, if Dragon doesn't get rid of the root of the cause, i.e. the world government, then this will just keep on happening. And it really does just make you wonder how many countries Dragon has liberated in the past that just got taken over by the world government the very next day. I mean, even going back to Kuma's flashback and Sorbet Kingdom, Dragon came there, he beat King Bakori, and then the people were free. And then a couple of years passed, and King Bakori came back with a fleet of world government ships to take back his kingdom. If Kuma wasn't there, then King Bakori would be King Bakori again. So yeah, you know, like Dragon, while he does good things, it's only a temporary fix to a permanent or semi-permanent problem. So yeah, you know, rooting for the world government's downfall, what's exactly new here? But of course, this also brings back the mystery of Tequila Wolf 2. You know, like, we don't know why they're building this bridge. We don't know where it starts. We don't know where they're going. All we know is that it's a mysterious giant bridge that is being funded by the world government. So moving on now, we go up to the Labo phase, and we see that Zoro and Jimbei have actually made it back to the 1000 Sunny. And Zoro said, hey, we gotta get the hell out of here, you know, that horse guy's gonna be back here any minute now. And I'm like, yo, Zoro and Jimbei knocked back Venus off screen. I wish we could see like what attack sent Venus back. Of course, while you could say it's not that important to see, I would have loved to seen it because, you know, we had the Kitetsu reaction going. I would love to see if Zoro saw Venus regenerate, you know, what attack was effective against him, how they send him away or at least got ahead of him. Like, there's so many questions about this, and it's like, damn, dude. I hope the anime fleshes it out. You know, the anime has done a really good job at fleshing out scenes here on Egghead. So I wouldn't be super shocked if we did get to see how Zoro and Jimbei got back to the ship. But I digress. You know, going on with it, they want to escape as soon as possible, but Lilith hits them with a lot of logical reasons as to why they can't. The acceleration is too slow, the tailwind is horrible, the wind is blowing north. We can't escape until we get rid of this geezer because he's just gonna knock us out of the sky. We will be sitting ducks essentially. Before she goes on though, that is when Atlas shows up. And Atlas, I don't even know what she does. She like punches her to the ground and then she clicks her head, which turns off Lilith's GPS device. And York, because of this, assumes that Lilith is dead. You know, she starts celebrating, saying, oh, that's one more down. That's great. And I'm like, okay. All right. I understand, you know, from York's position, you are hooked up to the mainframe. Your friend just went offline. They're probably dead, especially when they have the Gorosei hunting them down. But, you know, I feel like this could be an easy kill confirmed situation because we do know that York has communications to the Gorosei. Like, we've seen this time and time again where York simply taps her headset and then all the Gorosei can talk to York. So I'm wondering why York didn't say, hey, Gorosei, which one of you killed Lilith, right? Like, she didn't ask that question. I feel like if she did, it would have been cleared up that one of the Vegapunks is about to escape. But that just goes to show that York isn't exactly the mastermind Vegapunk out there, right? You know, she masterminded all of this, but at the end of the day, she's just greedy. You know, she's just a big eater. But yes, Atlas, after doing this, says, hey, guys, I need you to take care of Lilith. You go ahead. I will take care of this bozo. She doesn't say bozo, I said that. And she flies off and she tackles Nasujiro, but not before Venus takes off one of her arms. And despite that, Atlas keeps on flying and then eventually self-destructs with Venus in tow. And what's cool, you know, Atlas drops the one-liner, right? Venus says, hey, I didn't think you'd sacrifice yourself. And then Atlas said, no, Venus. This is called a service. And then she blows up. And I really wish that this did more damage to Venus. But, you know, after she blows up, you can actually see that he's already started to regenerate. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but it did work, right? Because not only did she stall Venus, but the explosion also propelled the 1000 Sunny off of the cloud after they use the coup de burst. So Atlas's service here actually had multiple layers to it, which I really respect. You know, I like that Oda did this. It's not one of those situations where it's a Pedro thing, and, you know, they could have escaped the situation if they tried a little bit harder. You know, Pedro didn't have to die. You know, I mean, I guess he didn't have too long to live anyways because of the lifespan thing. But, you know, here, Atlas stalling Venus, it makes a lot of sense. Somebody had to take the fall and push the 1000 Sunny off to the ocean. And, you know, Atlas, she wasn't my favorite Vegapunk, but I really did enjoy this chapter with her. I loved that she died with a smile, just like a true Will of D member, even though she doesn't have the Will of D. Another thing I really enjoyed out of this whole segment was Jimbei. Because Jimbei, you know, right after Atlas flies off with Venus, Jimbei right away starts getting the 1000 Sunny ready for the coup de burst. Chopper's like, hey, Jimbei, you know, what are you doing, brother? And then Jimbei looks at him and he says, hey, if we take too long thinking over this decision, this is going to bite us in the ass. So I really like that. You know, I love that snappy decision making. I'm glad he's just not another reaction panel, right? Because Jimbei could have easily been reduced to that, where he's like, oh no, you know, Atlas, please, please don't die, Atlas. What are you doing? But nope. Jimbei's the exact opposite. He wants to get things done, and not only is he prioritizing the safety of the Straw Hats above all else, but he's also respecting Atlas's wish. Jimbei's really good at that. You know, go back to any Jimbei interaction, Jimbei respects the hell out of other people's decisions. So I really like that he did this here. And yeah, the Thousand Sunny, they look like they're going to make it out a-okay. And now, moving on with the chapter, we cut back down to the coast of Egghead Island, and we see the fodder Marines reacting to the Gorosei. And it's actually pretty hilarious, because they're like, whoa, you know, a giant boar, a giant snake, a giant robot, Vice Admiral Hound. What the hell is happening here? As if Vice Admiral Hound has any answers. He actually responds by saying, I have no idea. No one told me about this. And it's so funny because he is one of the few Vice Admirals that has literally sat on the side and done nothing. Like he is yelling, you know, like he's not attacking giants. He's not attacking the giant ship, attacking Luffy. He's literally just standing there yelling, you know, like he's done this for the past 5 chapters. But as a huge Vice Admiral Hound fan, hopefully he'll have his comeuppance soon. And also, on a quick side note, I thought it was kind of interesting that the Marines called Jupiter a snake rather than a worm. I mean, he doesn't look like a snake whatsoever. I saw some people saying that this is due to the TCB translation, or it's tied to it, and how in the TCB, they call Jupiter an actual worm with a Y, which is like an offspring of dragons, which are reptilian, thus could be seen as a snake in a way, but in the official translations, they call him a worm with an O. So I don't believe he is a worm like TCB is inferring, so that makes this even. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you kind of look at him in a weird way, he resembles Rayquaza, right? Sort of. So now, the giant robot and Luffy, I really loved their interaction because it was a little bit comedic, it was a little bit sad, and also it brings up a lot of questions. So the first question I have is whether or not Luffy can use the voice of all things. We know he activated it back in Wano, but did he know what he was doing, right? Luffy's never acknowledged this power really. You know, whenever the voice of all things popped up, he was always like, oh, what the hell is this, you know? So it does make me wonder if Luffy can actually talk with it intentionally yet, right? Because, you know, the other situation was a life or death thing, right? He was drowning in the water, boom, voice of all things comes out. You know, it kind of reminds me of when Luffy first unlocked Conqueror's Haki back in Impel Down and Marineford. He used Conqueror's Haki to save Bon Clay, but Luffy was unconscious. Back in Marineford, he used Conqueror's Haki to save Ace, but he had no idea what the hell happened. So I wonder when Luffy will actually take the time and master this ability. Because in this chapter, you know, the robot Emeth is talking in the voice of all things dialogue boxes, and then you have Luffy on the other hand talking like normal. I do wonder if the robot can even understand Luffy, because there is one instance where Luffy's like, oh, a giant robot? That's so awesome. You can talk? Question mark. And then Emeth just completely ignores Luffy, and he says, oh, Joyboy's in danger. I must protect him, you know? So it's like, okay, can he understand him? I'm not super sure, because going back to their first interaction, when Emeth calls Luffy Joyboy, and Emeth, you know, says, hey, I'm talking about you, you could say that he understood Luffy there, but also Luffy, like, he turned around and was looking everywhere. So there is a chance that he just responded with that based on Luffy's reaction. But even then, though, I do love that Emeth used the backhand slap gag, because that's the exact same gag that we've seen Usopp, Sanji, and even Zoro and Nami use on Luffy multiple times whenever they're faced with Luffy's stupidity. So I do think that is, you know, a nice parallel between Joyboy's crew and Luffy's crew. So we go on a little bit more and we see what Emeth is truly capable of in a fight. And, you know, he whips out the fist. He's about to shoot that fist out, but it doesn't work, right? You know, Frankie and Sanji were super excited to see what Emeth was all about, but he ended up being a little bit of a disappointment. And it's not his fault. You know, the guy's been sitting away, rotting for the past 900 years. He's a little bit rusty, to say the least. So it's pretty funny, but the gag doesn't last super long, because since Emeth failed to fire off the punch, Jupiter actually ended up taking a chunk off of his body it's like a shark bite. It kind of reminds me of when Akainu attacked Whitebeard and took off like a chunk of his face. Like, it's a clean cut. You know, Jupiter is no joke, man. He doesn't have those pearly white chompers for nothing. Their damage output is insane. So it looks like Jupiter tries to go in for another bite, but Emeth is trying to hold him back. And that is when we see Saturn joining the battle. He says, hey, Jupiter, you got this. I will handle the giant ship. And he jumps aboard and stares down Kuma and Bonnie, which I thought was pretty cool, right? Because when you think about it, Bonnie and Kuma are his, quote, failures, right? He was the one overseeing Kuma and his development, and he was also the one who experimented on Ginny. So I bet by looking at these two, they bring him great shame as a member of the Gorosei. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to attack them first, but we don't exactly see that in this chapter. We actually end off this chapter with Saturn in the same spot. So I am now curious to see who is going to take care of him. Granted, I don't feel too threatened by his presence. I mean, we have a lot of giants here. You can literally see Dory and Brogy at the forefront of the ship. Sanji's here. Luffy's here. Bonnie is here. You know, Bonnie's tapped out. She's not in God Nika mode anymore, but I'm sure she has another punch in her. Like, I'm not worried about Saturn per se. And with Luffy, you know, just going back to Luffy for a second, Luffy is still in Gear Fit form. You know, who's to say Luffy can't just hit him with a single attack and send him flying like he did back on the island? So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how the Saturn situation is going to go down. But what I found kind of interesting is that coupled along Saturn jumping on the ship, we actually see another ship up above. Sanji, with his amazing observation haki, is the first one to notice that the Thousand Sunny has officially left the Labo phase. And if you guys recall from last chapter, when Nami called Sanji, she said that they have to figure out a way to stop the ship's fall, right? Because the Thousand Sunny, while it is a ship made out of atom wood, you still don't want it to take the blunt force of a fall like this. So I do wonder how they're going to mitigate that damage, right? Is Sanji going to skywalk and, you know, catch the ship? Or is Luffy going to catch it? Or is a giant going to catch it? Or we could go a different route and say that the ship lands on Saturn? You know, if Oda was willing to let Frankie run over Big Mom back in Wano, I wouldn't be super shocked if the Thousand Sunny ends up landing on Saturn. I think that'd be pretty par for the course based on how he's been portrayed thus far. And also, it would kill two birds with one stone. You know, landing on Saturn, I would argue, is better than landing on the ocean. Granted though, you know, last we saw, the ocean was kind of bouncing up and down thanks to Luffy's awakening, so maybe it's not going to be that bad if they do land, but, you know, who really knows? I'm just throwing out ideas here. So we go down a little bit more to the final page, and we see a couple of really cool things. First up, the Gorosei are now focusing most of their attention on Emeth, the giant robot, so that they can stop the broadcast. Vegapunk has now announced that he has left the Void Century segment of his message, and he's now going to focus on the future of the world. And we also see that Emeth is going to whip out that ability now. So what do we tackle first? First up, let's tackle Emeth and his fight against the Gorosei, because he's faced off against Jupiter and Warkity. The cool thing about Warkity is that you'll actually notice that he regrew his tusk, meaning that he, of course, can regenerate through Emeth's attacks, which is a little bit unfortunate, you know. I would love to see Emeth do some kind of permanent damage towards the Gorosei. We do know that they can take permanent damage since they have battle scars on their bodies, but Emeth has not shown that yet. Maybe we'll see it next chapter. You know, Emeth has a trump card in his sleeve. Maybe it will harm them. Or maybe it's a self-destruct button. You know, that's kind of where a lot of people are leaning right now. And personally, I can see it. You know, Emeth is in the mindset of sacrificing themselves for the team. And it would also parallel what Atlas did up on the Labo phase. Because Atlas, while holding back Nasujuro, loses an arm and then self-destructs. Maybe the robot's going to do the exact same thing. You know, they lost an arm and now they're going to self-destruct. Also, I think it's very, not poetic. I love the foreshadowing that Oda did here, because back when we first arrived on Egghead Island, the first things we saw was a giant space dragon fighting a giant robot. Luffy tried to hop into battle and attack the holographic dragon, but his attacks wouldn't work. Kind of like how the Celestial Dragons can regenerate, right? Luffy can't exactly hurt them. And then that is when Atlas showed up and then showed them how to hurt the holograms, you know? Atlas whipped out the light gloves. So in a way, like, Oda very much so foreshadowed this whole event and how Atlas and the giant robot are going to be the ones who end up, quote, fighting the Gorosei in the very end. So yeah, I really love what they did there. As far as Emeth goes, another route I could see is maybe he has a secret weapon attached to his back, because his back has been very pronounced in this chapter. You know, Oda made sure to draw some emphasis on the X that's back there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he whips out like a shield and a sword. I think that'd be awesome. And also, I do think that would be pretty on brand with how the robot has performed thus far. A lot of people, myself included, have been comparing this ancient robot to Frankie. You know, I mean, even going back to the punch that Emeth was about to do, Frankie has an ability like that. You know, Frankie has shot his fist out before and then he's whipped it back. You know, it's his strong right. So I wouldn't be surprised if, just like Frankie's General Shogun, if this robot has a saber, because Frankie has the V saber. So yeah, maybe he's gonna whip out the D saber, which sounds really bad out of context. You know, the D saber, you know, it reminds me of something out of Death Tube, which is a pretty cool manga. So going on now, Vegapunk's message. Vegapunk's gonna predict the future. Up until this point, Vegapunk has made a note that he doesn't want to speculate on the Void Century. But now that he's left that territory, he's now going to sum up what's going to happen in the future. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. You know, that's pretty cool. I'm assuming it's going to have to do with Joyboy, you know, God Nika, the rise of the D-Clan, maybe even the toppling of the world government. Not exactly sure. But in this final panel, Oda decides to end off with a shot of the impelled down prisoners. And I think that's notable. You know, just like Tequila Wolf, it seems like a really odd addition. When you think about the grand scheme of this message and how it revolves around the D-Clan and Joyboy, it makes a lot of sense. Because the first time we heard about God Nika, it was from Who's Who. And he said that he was a slave. You know, he was a prisoner of the world government at one point. And he says that as a prisoner, he used to wish for God Nika to come out and save them from their torment. So I wouldn't be surprised if Vegapunk drops the God Nika name here, or the Joyboy name, and then the prisoners are gonna start rooting for Joyboy, you know, rooting for Straw Hat Luffy. I do think that would be a pretty good way to maybe end the message. But one thing I really hope we see from this message before it ends, though, is the reveal of the Ancient Kingdom name. Because we know that Vegapunk knows it. You know, Clover knew it by reading the books and studying the poneglyph at Ohara, and we know that they saved those books from Ohara, so there's a good chance that Vegapunk knows that name as well. So I'm surprised he hasn't revealed it yet. So maybe he'll do it here in the final parts of this message. But also, maybe he revealed it already in the parts of the message that we didn't get to hear. You know, maybe he talked about the D-Clan, saying, oh, you know, the D-Clan, there exists blah, 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 from the ancient kingdom named blah, blah, blah. But we just didn't exactly get the memo. But yeah, overall though, man, this was a great chapter. We are back to 19 pages in length. The past couple of chapters, Oda has been dropping 13 pages one after another, which, you know, rightfully so made us worry about Oda's health, because 13-page chapters are not that common. So what did Oda do this week? He dropped 19 pages, which is even more insane. But yes, next week we will be getting another chapter, and next week's chapter will actually be One Piece's 27th anniversary. 27 years of serialization. And I think Oda is lining it up to be an absolute banger. Because you gotta remember, it's gonna coincide with Emeth's trump card, it's gonna coincide with the finale of Vegapunk's message, and possibly the end of Egghead Island. You know, like, there's a lot of things at play here, man. And I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this chapter down below. What do you think about Emeth, Vegapunk, the message, Venus, Atlas? Did you care about Atlas? I don't know. I was surprised. I will say this. I was surprised by how many people actually really liked her. You know, I'm not slandering, but, you know, personally, she wasn't my favorite Vegapunk. So seeing all the outcries of support for her and, you know, praising her for her efforts, I was actually a little bit shocked. I was a little bit moved even. But yes, again, love to hear what you guys have to say. So yeah, with that being said, my name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace. Also, sorry if this is a little bit of a jump scare at the end of the video, but I do want to do some shameless plugging because I don't do that often. So first up, I stream over on Twitch pretty often. I'd say almost every other night. So if you want to follow me, go over there at Twitch, and my username is SYVDUCK. I will be linking this all in the description and the pinned comment down below. And also, I have a Twitter at Sinful, SYVNFUL. gaming channel, same as the Twitch name. And then I also have an anime reaction channel. I know a lot of channels, a lot of different names. Sorry about that. Anime reaction channel, it's over at youtube.com/@SomnusReacts, or just Somnus, or like I said, in the description below. But yeah, that's all I got to plug today. Thank you guys again for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Peace out, y'all.